Good evening, this is Pastor Barbara, aka Preach with Parrots. Today is November 4th. We're making this recording at the same time we're in a live Bible study in iblog.tv. We've lost a good half hour at the beginning of this Bible study. For what reason, I'm not sure. But we're starting from where we are in the book of Isaiah. Isaiah 18. Goes on to say, they were strong and brutal. They will come from their land divided by rivers, and they will bring gifts to the Lord, all-powerful, who is worshipped on Mount Zion. Mount Zion is that, hang on. We'll just leave it for a little bit, and then would you take care of it, Larry? Leave it up for a while. And then hit clear. So, we now go to Isaiah 19, and it talks a little bit about the occult. These are the surrounding countries. Have nothing to do with Israel. But because they're not God-fearing, things will happen to them. Hang on. Got a little something I have to do here. Okay. Do nothing, Larry, leave things as they are. And so we're in chapter 19, and this same thing continues. In chapter 19 it says, this is a message about Egypt. Moderator, again, we have problems. This is the third, I think, this evening. One of them, I have screenshots available for you, but as you can see, that isn't anything that any of us whose name is up there have written. Okay, that's all I need to know is that you guys are on it. Thank you so much for your quick reaction. Thanks a lot. Okay. Praise, do we have it? Yes or no? Will do. If you don't, well, I think the only reason that I need what I'm asking for don't know why my phone is ringing. Praise, do you have it?
Private caller.
Okay. Okay. Oh, all right. You're doing it. Okay. Thank you. And in that case, let me take care of this. I'm glad. The reason for what we're talking about is that on iBlog, if you are a pro, and it bans the ISP. You know, so somebody has to go out and deal with that. Big deal. Continuing now, they're talking about trouble on the Nile. This is a message about Egypt. As the Lord comes to Egypt riding on a cloud, the people are weak from fear, their idols tremble. As he approaches and says, I will punish Egypt with civil war. Meaning Israel or Judah won't even be involved. Neighbors, cities, and kingdoms will fight each other. Very reminiscent of the story that I gave you, and I believe the name of the video is The Battle Is Not Yours, because that was the words of the Lord to the musician he chose to speak to when he's saying, we don't have to fight our battles, God will. And if he's fighting for us, guess who wins? And he said, we will, the battle is not yours, but mine. Our problems aren't ours. This is why we can remain happy and calm when things happen, because the Lord is in charge. I have no idea how the Lord will handle some of my problems, but since he's handling them instead of me, I know he'll do a good job. And he said here, the Lord will come to Egypt and ride swiftly on a crowd, that even their idols, their false gods, will tremble. Egypt will be discouraged when I confuse their plans. They will try to get advice from their idols. I will read this in the King James Version, but you can see a little bit of the occult going to a perceived source of help. Those who go for their power to Satan or some pagan god, they try to get advice from their idols, from the spirits of the dead, and from fortune tellers. I will put the Egyptians under the power of a cruel, heartless king. I am the Lord all-powerful and have promised this. Now let me make sure that I'm going all the way to the end of the chapter. Yeah. We continue in the 19th chapter on the 5th verse. Trouble along the Nile. We're talking about Egypt. We're talking about all the countries that surround or are near Israel, that are enemies of Israel. The Nile River will dry up and become parched lands. Its streams will stink. When a natural river dries up, you know what happens? Fish die. Plant life dies. You know, rotten vegetables, dead protein. Egypt will have no water, and the reeds and tall grass will dry up. Fields along the Nile will be completely barren. Many people that live on the shores of a large river will plant accordingly. And I have spent a little bit of my youth in Missouri, where my dad's people are from, and we have the mighty Mississippi River. There are times when the river overflows. And if you think about years before, when they didn't have pipes for water to run through, and people planned according to what always happened, grow crops, and they would plant accordingly, so that at the time, remember we've talked in the past about the former rain and the latter rain. Former rain is what you get around in the spring, around the time you plant. Gentle rain. If you planted seeds and had a mighty river overflow, you're in trouble. Because you've got seeds that would wash away. But just before harvest, and God talks about the former rain and the latter rain, that huge outpouring that comes in the fall. You've got plants that have got deep roots, and they need a lot of water for that fast spurt of growth just before you're ready to pick the corn or the peas or whatever the crop might be. And so their plans will be discouraged. I will put let's see, I read that. None of the cloth makers will know what to do. So now we're into industry. We have herders, sheep herders, goat herders, people who raise animals for their food, for their skin, for their fur. They're in trouble. And then we have the farmers and the planters. They, of course, depend on the rain and on the seasons. And they will be into trouble. And now he mentions those who make cloth. A little bit more advanced what they do, but they will have problems making a living. Those who fish in the Nile will be discouraged. None of the cloth makers will know what to do, and they will turn pale. Weavers, now we're talking about making the cloth, will be confused. Paid workers will cry and mourn. The king's officials in Zoan are foolish themselves and give stupid advice. How can they say to him, "We're very wise, and our families go back to kings long ago"? I had a relative that believed we were out of royalty. Come on. How can we say to him, "We're very wise, and our families go back to kings of long ago"? Where are those wise men now? When the fish are dying, and the rivers are dried up and they stink, and industry, cloth making, is not working out. Where are those men now? If they can, let them say what the Lord All-Powerful intends for Egypt. The royal officials in Zoan and in Memphis, Memphis is very close to where the pyramids are that people go see, and very close to the land of Goshen. Egypt was a huge country, but Goshen was a place where there was a lot of good land for herding. And so when Joseph brought his family over, because they were herders, the Pharaoh said, I'm going to let them live in Goshen because your family, they are herders, sheep herders, goat herders, whatever. And it's a land that's very appropriate. So that is very close to Memphis also, in the northern part of Egypt, not too far from Cairo. That's where tourists go. And it's not an easy life for tourists. It's not. One of the biggest problems I had there was that the language doesn't contain letters that look like A, B, C, D, E. And I never knew where I was. I never knew what floor to get off the elevator on. So much for that. The royal officials in Zone and in Memphis are foolish and deceive the leaders in every state, are given bad advice to the nation. The Lord has confused Egypt. Its leaders have made it stagger and vomit like a drunkard. No one in Egypt can do a thing, no matter who they are. When the Lord, all-powerful, punishes Egypt, remember these whole chapters are all about what God's plans are for the nations that surround or are near Israel at this time. That the northern tribes have now been taken off to Assyria, and we have only 2 tribes plus the temple and the Levites. And we're talking about, God is talking about the countries that surround them. When the Lord all-powerful punishes Egypt with his mighty men, the Egyptians will become terribly weak and will tremble with fear. They will be so terrified of Judah. 2 tribes. Egypt, huge country. They will be frightened by the very mention of its name. This will happen because of what the Lord all-powerful is planning against Egypt. Now we have about another 5 or 6 verses in this chapter. This is, the Lord will bless Egypt, Assyria, and Israel. The time is coming when Hebrew will be spoken in 5 Egyptian cities. I don't know how long it will remain this way, but English has been the language of international business. If you're an international businessman, you learn English. I don't know how long that will last, since we are so indebted. We borrow money from China to give it to other people. It doesn't even go through this country. We get so involved with things like that. I don't know how long English will be the language of international trade. But it has been and is at this time. The time is coming when Hebrew will be spoken in 5 Egyptian cities, and their people will become followers of the Lord. One of these cities will be called the City of the Sun. In the heart of Egypt, an altar will be set up for the Lord. At its border, a shrine will be built to honor him. These will remind Egyptians that the Lord all-powerful is with them. And when they are in trouble and ask for help, they will send someone to rescue them from their enemies. The Lord will show the Egyptians who he is. The Lord will eventually show all people who he is. And they will know and worship the Lord, and they will bring him sacrifices and offerings. You know, it's one thing to assent, to mentally agree with a religion, a thought, but to do more than mentally agree. They were going to these places to worship. After the Lord has punished Egypt, the people will turn to him. People usually do. When my people which are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, will heal their land. I got the order wrong on one. Will hear, will forgive, and will heal. That's the order. Then he will answer their prayers, and the Egyptians will be healed. First, they have to realize their situation. They have to confess it. Change their ways. Too many people try to do it without that changing their ways. It's called repentance. So sorry that you did something that you don't do it again. Sometimes people try to leave that out of the equation. Or they'll confess it. They'll be sorry. And they'll confess it. But not sorry enough to change their ways. That's repentance. At that time, a good road will run from Egypt to Assyria. You know, that's what the Romans were known for when they became the world leaders. The Greeks were known for language, culture, sports. When they went out of power and lost to Rome within 100 years to the birth of Christ, and the Romans came in. The Romans were known for building roads, for building aqueducts, for chariots, for armies. That's what they were known for. Well, he says a good road will run from Egypt to Assyria. Egypt being, we have the Mediterranean here, Egypt being down here, Assyria being way up here, Israel being about right there. That, if it's going to be a road, it's not going to go through the Mediterranean Sea. That means it's going to go to the northern part of Egypt until you get past Israel where the Mediterranean Sea ends, and then go up through Syria and then Assyria by land. And they'll travel back and forth from Egypt to Assyria, and they will worship together. Israel will join with these two countries. They will be a blessing to everyone on earth. Then the Lord all-powerful will bless them, saying, the Egyptians are my people. I created the Assyrians and chose the Israelites. That's the end of the 19th chapter. Now, from there, we go to Isaiah 20 for 6 verses. King Sargon of Assyria gave orders for his army commander to capture the city of Ashdod. About the same time, the Lord told me, Isaiah is writing this. So at this time, God tells Isaiah the prophet, Isaiah, take off everything, including your sandals. It would be embarrassing if the Lord told prophets nowadays something like that. But remember Jeremiah and Mrs. Jeremiah? He had children with her, and each one taught a specific lesson. So sometimes he asked them to do things that to us are kind of strange, because they were being taught something in a manner that, first of all, they wouldn't forget. Isaiah, take off everything, including your sandals. I did this, and I went around naked and barefoot for 3 years. This is a long time. Then the Lord said, what Isaiah has done is a warning for Egypt and Ethiopia. Everyone in these 2 countries will be led away naked and barefoot by the king of Assyria. Now we can believe that because Assyria has just taken the 10 northern tribes of Israel and has them within its borders. It's very powerful at this time. Young or old, they will be taken prisoner, and Egypt will be disgraced. They will be confused and frustrated. They will depend on Ethiopia and brag about Egypt. When this happens, the people who live there along the coast of the Mediterranean, the southern coast of the Mediterranean, the northern is, of course, Europe. Those who live along the coast will say, look what happened to them. We ran to them for safety. These big countries, Egypt, Ethiopia, we ran to them, hoping they would protect us from the king of Assyria. But now, there's no escape for us. We're going now to Isaiah 23. We're going to jump over 22. And we're going to talk about the city of Tyre. And I'm trying to work here with 2 Bibles to make sure we're going to go all the way through verse 18. Okay, this other Bible takes me through 20, so I'll have to stop a little early. Let me double check. I've got to put the one Bible down here. I'm running out of space on my lap. Yeah, we want to be in Isaiah 23, and we want to end at 18, because then we go back to chapter 10. Talking about the countries around Israel. This is a message from the distant lands about the city of Tyre. Cry, you sea-going ships. Tyre and its houses lie in ruin. Mourn in silence, you shop owners of Sidon. You people on the coast, you sailors, crossed oceans, making your city rich. Your merchants sailed the seas, making you wealthy by trading with nation after nation. They brought back grain that grew along the Nile. That would be from Egypt. Sidon, you're a mighty fortress built along the sea, but you'll be disgraced like a married woman who never had children. Remember all the women we've studied in the Bible who were unable to have children and how badly they felt? Remember Abraham's wife Sarah? 90 years old, way past childbearing years. She laughed when an angel disguised as a human being was talking to Abraham about the fact that they would have children. She heard it and she laughed, just like I would laugh. Yeah. Somebody come and claim to be a prophet and say, Pastor Barbara, you're going to have kids. I wouldn't be the only one here tonight laughing. We'd all be laughing. Impossibility. It was something that a woman felt she could give her husband. Just like her virginity is something that a few women have left and are able to get married and give to their spouse. Many of them can no longer give that gift because you can only give it once. And once you've given it, you can't give it again to somebody else. So that's the way women in those days felt about giving their husband a child. Just a minute. I keep double checking. Here where I am. Egypt hears about Tyre, it will tremble. For some reason, I want verse 6. They brought back grain that grew along the Nile. When Egypt hears about Tyre, it will tremble. All of you along the coast had better cry and sail far across the ocean. Can this be the happy city that stood for centuries? Its people have spread to distant lands. Its merchants were kings, honored all over the world. Who planned to destroy Tyre? The Lord all-powerful planned it to bring shame and disgrace on those who are honored by everyone on earth. People of Tyre were admired by people around the world. People of Tyre, your harbor is destroyed. You will have to become farmers, just like the Egyptians. In other words, the fact that they were on the shores of the mighty Mediterranean Sea is going to do them no good. The Lord's hand has reached across the sea, upsetting the nations. This is maybe a little bit boring. Reading about all of these countries that are so far away from us, and this has been so long ago. But these are part of the words that God gave to the prophet Isaiah, who then speaks them to whoever will listen. The Lord's land has, I'm going to tell them that Tyre is about to become nothing. The Lord's hand has reached across the sea, upsetting the nations. He's given a command to destroy the fortresses in the land of Canaan. The Lord has said to the people of Sidon, your celebrating is over, you are crushed. That reminds me of the night that the mighty kingdom of Babylon fell. Remember that night? We'll be doing it again maybe in about 6 or 8 months, when the people of Judah are carted off to Babylon the same way the people of Israel were carted off to Assyria. Belshazzar had a party one night, and he was just a little tipsy. Just had enough booze in him to make him a little foolish, a little stupid, a little willing to do something dumb. And he had over 100 special invitees. And he remembered that when they invaded Judah and the temple, they stole or brought with them vessels. A vessel is anything that holds anything. This glass is a vessel for liquids, but for cold liquids. And he remembered that there were sacred vessels. And in his drunkenness, he said, wouldn't it be great if we could take the sacred vessels of the God of Israel and put our Seagram 7 Crown or whatever they were drinking, and put it in these holy vessels, and we would drink from them. Wouldn't that be a hoot? Well, it was. It was such a hoot that a hand appeared. Only about this much of it. And it wrote on the wall, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. Scared Belshazzar half to death. Scared me to death if there was writing on the wall. I get scared if I see writing on the monitor and I didn't write it. And it's my program, and nobody else can write in that spot, and I didn't write it, and I'm thinking, what kind of hacker is messing with my computer, my program? Mene, mene, tekel upharsin. You've been weighed, and you don't weigh enough. You've fallen short. And it's too late. You can't put rocks in your pocket. You can't eat a little bit more. It's over with. Tonight. Tonight, you lose your kingdom. Tonight, you lose your life. Tonight, everything is over with and there's nothing you can do. And the Medes, as in the Medes and the Persians, found a little passageway. It had been a river that dried up, and they thought the king's palace was extremely well protected. But they had no clue that when you take that, first of all, that this river had dried up, and you take the water out of the river and you got a little place you get on your belly and you can crawl in. And some of the Medes crawled in. And that night, the mighty King Belshazzar lost his life, his kingdom. Mighty Babylon was no more. That's what was Iraq. The Persians were what is now Iran, and Babylon was what is now Iraq, and it all ended in just a few minutes. Handwriting on the wall, too late to do anything about it. You can run to the altar, you can do all kinds of stuff, you can say you're sorry. There comes a time when I'm sorry is too late. All right. When Egypt hears about Tyre, it will tremble. Can this be the happy city that stood for centuries? Your harbor is destroyed. The Lord's hand has reached across the sea, upsetting the nations. Even if you escape to Cyprus. Cyprus is that little, if you're looking for Israel on a map and it doesn't have any language written on it, you look at the Mediterranean Sea and there's an island. Well, there's Malta if you're over by the European side. But if you're over here by Syria and Israel, there's an island called Cyprus. Barnabas, one of Paul's assistants, came from there. And you'll know, I wouldn't be mentioning it if I haven't been there also. What was I doing in Cyprus? It was 1967. The Six-Day War was in its 7th or 8th day. It had just ended. And I was planning on going to Israel. And the group I was going with was to one of the universities I had graduated from in the past. And they pulled out. Nobody wanted to go to a country that has just had a war. But there's some dear old Baptists in West Covina that used to go every year. And I found out about them. And the trip was a little longer and it cost a little bit more, but they were willing to take on a woman preacher, which is unusual for Baptists. But there were some laws between the countries because of this war. These laws were heightened. If you were in Egypt, they would not let you in Israel. In other words, you could not get a bus or a plane that would leave Egypt and would land in Israel. Planes coming out of Egypt could not land in Israel. If you had ever been, according to your passport, in Israel, you couldn't even get into the country of Egypt. So in order to go both places, you had to go to Egypt first. That would take care of the not being able to go to Egypt if you had been to Israel, because you would go there first. But you couldn't go from there to Israel. So this little island, if you're looking at a map, and here's the Mediterranean Sea, Europe up here, Egypt and Ethiopia and Libya and all these places down here, and then I guess it's backwards on the screen. Over here is Israel. And right here in the Mediterranean is this little island, Cyprus. If you go straight west, you come upon northern Israel and southern Syria. That's where Cyprus is. When Egypt hears about Tyre, it will tremble. Its people have spread to distant lands. The Lord all-powerful planned it to bring shame and disgrace upon those who are honored by everybody on earth. People of Tyre, your harbor is destroyed. The Lord's hand has reached across the sea, upsetting the nations. He has given a command to destroy the fortresses of the land of Canaan. Canaan was what Israel was called before it was called Israel. Before it was taken over by God's people, before He led them there and it became the promised land. Your celebrating is over, you are crushed, even if you escape to Cyprus, which means you sail a little bit, but there is land on this island. You won't find peace. Look what the Assyrians have done to Babylonia. Assyrians are the ones who have taken northern tribes of Israel. Babylonia is the country that's about to do the same to the two southern tribes. They have attacked, destroying every palace in the land. Now wild animals live among the ruins. Not a fortress will be left standing. So tell all the sea-going ships to mourn. The city of Tyre will be forgotten for 70 years, which is the lifetime of a king. 70 years was also the period of time that Judah was held captive by Babylon. And that's where Daniel in the lion's den and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were in the fiery furnace, and this is where the king lost his mind and he wandered around like a wild animal and his fingernails grew like claws, and Daniel explained the prophecies to the various kings and was friends of all of them, and then he's praying, Daniel is praying, Lord, help me understand what's going on, and Daniel reads Jeremiah's prophecy, and Jeremiah says it's going to last for 70 years, and Daniel says, wow, that's about to happen then pretty quick. And an angel explains a lot of things that are still future for us. It explains the period of time when Jesus will be born and die, and things that have not yet come to pass will come to pass. All of that happens within that 70-year period. The city of Tyre will be forgotten for 70 years, which is a lifetime of a king. Then Tyre will be like that evil woman in the song, and this is the song. You've all gone and forgotten, you evil woman, so strut through the town, singing and playing your favorite tune to be remembered again. That's the song. At the end of those 70 years, the Lord will let Tyre get back into business. This city on the Mediterranean that was known for everything it ships, sold, and moved around the world. City will be like a woman who sells her body to everyone in every nation on earth. But none of what is money will belong to the Lord, and it will be used to buy more than enough food and good clothes for those who worship the Lord. Hang on now. I need another place to put my Bible down here. We're now going back to, whoops, gotta change here. We're now going back to Isaiah 10. We haven't got into what I call the meat of Isaiah yet. Right now, God is telling the prophet Isaiah, while he has him walking around without any clothes or sandals, and he's telling those in Israel and anybody else who listens and learns what is going to happen to those nations surrounding Israel. This is the point he's making now. Much of Isaiah is known by Christians because a lot of the book of Isaiah describes the Lord Jesus. Let me see if I can use this Bible here without losing my place. Let me read something to you. Whoops. This will sound somewhat familiar to some of you, a little unfamiliar because it's a modern version and we're used to the King James Version. Has anyone believed in or seen the mighty power of the Lord in action? Like a young plant or root, it sprouts in dry ground. He suffered and endured great pain for us, but we thought his suffering was punishment from God. By suffering, the servant will learn the true meaning of obeying the Lord. He's talking about the Lord Jesus. This is chapter 53. Let me look real quickly at another chapter here. God's faithful people are dragged off and killed, and no one cares. Evil sweeps them away, but in death they find peace in obeying God. This is the Isaiah that we have yet to get into. But for right now, we're going to go to Isaiah 10. We're going to start in verse 5. And before we get to the end of that, we will end for the evening. I will read till I get to a good stopping off place. This is the title I'm going to give you now. Over the next few verses that will be read, the remnant of Jews will be saved. We have talked about the countries surrounding Israel. Then we talked about judgment against Assyria, the huge country that has already taken over the northern 10 tribes. And now the next, if we wanted to give a title as to what we're going to be reading, this takes us back to Isaiah 10. The remnant of Jews to be saved. Who is the remnant? And we always go back, I do, I think all women do. We think of remnants as when we're going to buy cloth material to make clothes. And fabric stores always have remnant sales. If they've got a big bolt of material and they've got 50, 60, 80, 100 yards on it, then you can make uniforms for everybody in a school. But as you begin to use up most of what's on the bolt, then fabric stores have remnant sales. What can you do with 3 yards? With a yard, you can make a blouse. Maybe blouse and skirt for a little girl. When you get close to the end, what's left is the remnants. What was once great and mighty and lots of it is now a little bit. And because it's just a little bit, what you can do with it is very limited. And so fabric stores have remnant sales, and I think that's probably what most women think of. I don't know what guys think of when they hear of remnant. But what Isaiah is going to talk about now is the remnant of Jews to be saved. Who will that be? Well, the Jews that haven't been dealt with yet are the tribes of Judah and the tiny tribe of Benjamin. The main city in Judah is Jerusalem. The temple is there. And the tribe of the Levites are there. That is all that's left of 12 tribes. This is all that's left. This is the remnant. But God has always said through the Bible, all He needs is a remnant. God doesn't need an army to win a war. He needs a couple of people who will do whatever He says, even if that means sing and dance and praise the Lord instead of firing off guns or bows and arrows. God only needs a few that are holy and that are obedient. And I could tell you many, many stories in the Old and New. That's all God needs is 1 or 2. If they're obedient, if they do what He says, and if they live a holy life so that they will listen and be obedient. Okay, here we go. You people are in trouble. You've made cruel and unfair laws that let you cheat the poor and needy and rob widows and orphans. But what will you do when you're fiercely attacked and punished by foreigners? Where will you run for help? Where will you hide your valuables? How will you escape being captured or killed? The Lord is still angry, and He isn't through with you yet. The Lord says, I'm furious, and I will use the king of Assyria as a club to beat you down, you godless people. The Lord has said in the Old Testament many times, He will not come down and beat up Israel. They were His people. He says, I will not come down and hit you and fire arrows at you. God said, if you serve me, I will bless you. If you don't, I will let your enemies deal with you. In other words, if you don't want to serve God, and you don't, then your enemies will deal with you. So Israel, if you don't serve God, God's not going to come down and beat on you. But maybe Egypt, maybe Syria, maybe Assyria, maybe Arabia. God will allow there to be a war and will allow your enemies to win. That has been what God has told his people throughout the Old Testament. The king of Assyria says, "My army commanders are kings. They have already captured the cities of Calno, Charhamish, Hamath, Arpad, Samaria, and Damascus." Samaria was the capital of the 10 tribes of Israel. Damascus is the capital of Syria. They were weaker than the gods of those powerful nations, and I will destroy Jerusalem together with its gods and idols, just as I did Samaria. I did it for the 10 tribes of the north. I can do it for the 2 tribes of the south. The Lord will do what he planned against Jerusalem and Mount Zion. Mount Zion is that piece of real estate where the temple was, where now the Al-Aqsa or the Blue Mosque is, the 3rd most important mosque to the Muslims, because they say that it was from there that Muhammad ascended into heaven. The Lord will do what he has planned against Jerusalem and Mount Zion. He will punish the proud and boastful king of Assyria. Just because Assyria is on top right now doesn't mean that they can't be punished. And that king says, "I did these things by my own power because I'm smart." And clever. "I attacked kings like a wild bull, and I took the land and the treasures of their nations, and I have conquered the whole world, and it was easier than taking eggs from an unguarded nest." By the way, we should start having babies Monday. Sunday will be 21 days since Mama flew off from the stand behind me into her nest and laid an egg. And with the smaller birds, the cockatiels and the lovebirds, you don't count from when they're laid. You count from when they are laid on by the mother. And she started Monday. So Sunday, this coming Sunday, will be 3 weeks that she laid the first egg. And we could start having little lovebirds Monday, Tuesday, and so forth. So it said it's just as easy as taking eggs from an unguarded nest. No one even flapped a wing or made a peep. King of Assyria, you came and you got the northern 10 tribes. Can an axe or a saw overpower the one who uses it? See, it's not the weapons of war that we have that cause us to win or lose a war. It's the people who use them and the people who know what to do with them. Okay. I'm reading a little bit in my chat box, and I'm just about through. I've got a verse or two, and I'm ending at the end of verse 19. So it's not the weapons you got, it's the people. It's your soldiers. It's the people who wield these weapons. The mighty Lord all-powerful will send a terrible disease to strike down your army. It doesn't make any difference how big your army is if they're all sick in bed. They're not going to protect your land very well. And you will burn with fever, and under your royal robes the holy God, who is the light of Israel, will turn into a fire, and one day you'll go up in flames just like the thorn bush. The Lord will make your beautiful forests and fertile fields slowly rot. There will be so few trees that even a young child can count them. And that's taken us through about 2/3 of the 10th chapter. And I'm not going to mark these two Bibles. I'm going to lay them face to face this way over here, and I'll mark them when the program is over with. And this is where we will take up next week. Now I'm going to close our video. I apologize. You missed about a half hour. We had a couple problems with the recording earlier on, but out of respect for the people that are at our live program on iBlog, I didn't want to bore them and repeat it. So we're closing the video, and it will be available soon on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, Preacher with Parrots.